Hello, we're back. We have more Deathworld. I'm a little behind this week, but that's okay. That's fine. All right, give me like a minute and a half or 2 minutes, and then we'll get started. It is still warm for me, so again, no special setup. I'm sorry if the sound quality is a little funky, but once the heat dies down a bit, we'll get back to it. It's just hell in this like wannabe booth I set up. It's so hot. I'm sorry. All right, we'll get down to business in like a minute or two. Okay, let's get down to business. We got an exciting chapter ahead of us. I'll read two if I have the time. It's a bit of a toss-up. But either way, let's read chapter 22. Jason stood to one side and watched the deadly cargo being loaded into the hold of the ship. The Pyrrans were in good humor as they stowed away riot guns, grenades, and gas bombs. When the backpack atom bomb was put aboard, one of them broke into a marching song, and the others picked it up. Maybe they were happy, but the approaching carnage only filled Jason with an intense gloom. He felt that somehow he was a traitor to life. Perhaps the life form he had found needed destroying, and perhaps it didn't. Without making the slightest attempt at conciliation, destruction would be plain murder. Kirk came out of the operations building, and the starter pumps could be heard whining inside the ship. They would leave within minutes. Jason forced himself into a foot-dragging rush and met Kirk halfway to the ship. "I'm coming with you, Kirk. You owe me at least that much for finding them." Kirk hesitated, not liking the idea. "This is an operational mission," he said. "No room for observers, and the extra weight. And it's too late to stop us, Jason. You know that." "You Pyrrans are the worst liars in the universe," Jason said. "We both know that ship can lift 10 times the amount it's carrying today. Now, do you let me come, or forbid me without reason at all?" "Get aboard," Kirk said. "But keep out of the way, or you'll get trampled." This time, with a definite destination ahead, the flight was much faster. Meta took the ship into the stratosphere in a high ballistic arc that ended at the islands. Kirk was in the co-pilot's seat. Jason sat behind them, where he could watch the screens. The landing party, 25 volunteers, were in the hold below with the weapons. All the screens in the ship were switched to the forward viewer. They watched the green islands appear and swell, then vanish behind the flames of the breaking rockets. Jockeying the ship carefully, Meta brought it down on a flat shelf near the cave mouth. Jason was ready this time for the blast of mental hatred, but it still hurt. The gunners laughed and killed gleefully as every animal on the island closed in on the ship. They were slaughtered by the thousands, and still more came. "Do you have to do this?" Jason asked. "It's murder, carnage, just butchering those beasts like that." "Self-defense," Kirk said. "They attack us and they get killed. What could be simpler? Now shut up, or I'll throw you out there with them. It was half an hour before the gunfire slackened. Animals still attacked them, but the mass assaults seemed to be over. Kirk spoke into the intercom. Landing party away, and watch your step. They know we're here and will make it as hot as they can. Take the bomb into that cave and see how far back it runs. We can always blast them from the air, but it'll do no good if they're dug into solid rock. Keep your screen open, leave the bomb, and pull back at once if I tell you to. Now move! The men swarmed down the ladders and formed into open battle formation. They were soon under attack, but the beasts were picked off before they could get close. It didn't take long for the man at point to reach the cave. He had his pickup trained in front of him, and the watchers in the ship followed the advance. Big cave, Kirk grunted. Slants back and down. What I was afraid of. Bomb dropped on that would just close it up. No guarantee that anything sealed in it could eventually get out. Or couldn't eventually get out. We'll have to see how far down it goes. There was enough heat in the cave to use the infrared filters. The rock walls stood out harshly, black and white, as the advance continued. No signs of life since entering the cave, the officer reported. Gnawed bones at the entrance and some bat droppings. It looks like a natural cave, so far. Step by step, the advance continued, slowing as it went. Insensitive as the Pyrrans were to psi pressure, even they were aware of the blast of hatred being continuously leveled at them. Jason, back in the ship, had a headache that slowly grew worse instead of better. Watch out! Kirk shouted, staring at the screen with horror. The cave was filled from wall to wall with pallid, eyeless animals. They poured from tiny side passages and seemed to literally emerge from the ground. Their front ranks dissolved in flame, but more kept pressing in. On the screen, the watchers in the ship saw the cave spin dizzily as the operator fell. Pale bodies washed up and concealed the lens. Close ranks! Flamethrowers and gas! Kirk bellowed into the mic. Less than half of the men were alive after that first attack. The survivors, protected by the flamethrowers, set off the gas grenades. Their sealed battle armor protected them, while the section of cave filled with gas. Someone dug through the bodies of their attackers and found the pickup. Leave the bomb there and withdraw, Kirk ordered. We've had enough losses already. A different man stared out of the screen. The officer was dead. Sorry, sir, he said, but it will be just as easy to push ahead as back as long as the gas grenades hold out. We're too close now to pull back. That's an order, Kirk shouted, but the man was gone from the screen and the advance continued. Jason's fingers hurt where he had clamped them to the chair arm. He pulled them loose and massaged them. On the screen, the black and white cave flowed steadily towards them. Minute after minute went by this way. Each time the animals attacked again, a few more gas grenades were used up. Something ahead! Looks different! The panting voice cracked from the speaker. The narrow cave slowly opened out into a gigantic chamber, so large the roof and far walls were lost in the distance. What are those? Kirk asked. Get a searchlight over and to the right there. The picture on the screen was fuzzy and hard to see now, dimmed by the layers of rock in between. Details couldn't be made out clearly, but it was obvious this was something unusual. Never saw anything quite like before, the speaker said. Looks like big plants of 10 meters tall at least, yet they're moving. Those branches, tentacles or whatever they are, keep pointing towards us. I get the darkest feeling in my head. Blast one! See what happens, Kirk said. The gun fired, and at the same instant, an intensified wave of mental hatred rolled over the men, dropping them to the ground. They rolled in pain, blacked out, and unable to think or fight the underground beast that poured over them in renewed attack. In the ship, far above, Jason felt the shock to his mind and wondered how the men below could have lived through it. The others in the control room had been hit by it as well. Kirk pounded on the frame of the screen and shouted to the unhearing men below, Pull back! Come back! It was too late. The men only stirred slightly as the victorious Pyrrhan animals washed over them, clawing for joints in their armor. Only one man moved, standing up and beating the creatures away with his bare hands. He stumbled a few feet and bent over the writhing mass below him. With a heave of his shoulders, he pulled another man up. The man was dead, but his shoulder pack was still strapped to his back. Bloody fingers fumbled at the pack, then both men were washed back under the wave of death. "That was the bomb!" Kirk shouted to Meta. "If he didn't change the setting, it's still on 10 seconds minimum. Get out of here!" Jason had just time to fall back on the acceleration couch before the rockets blasted. The pressure leaned on him and kept mounting. Vision blacked out, but he didn't lose consciousness. Air screamed across the hull, then the sound stopped as they left the atmosphere behind. Just as Meta cut the power, a glare of white light burst from the screens. They turned black instantly as the hull pickups burned out. She switched filters into place, then pressed the button that rotated new pickups into position. Far below, in the boiling sea, a climbing cloud of mushroom-shaped flame filled the spot where the island had been seconds before. The three of them looked at it, silently and unmoving. Kirk recovered first. "Head for home! Meta, get operations on the screen. 25 men are dead, but they did their job. They knocked out those beasts, whatever they were, and ended the war. I can't think of a better way for a man to die." Meta set the orbit, then called operations. "Trouble getting through," she said. "I have a robot landing beam response, but no one is answering the call." A man appeared on the empty screen. He was beaded with sweat and had a harried look in his eyes. "Kirk," he said. "Is that you? Get the ship back here at once. We need her firepower at the perimeter. All blazes broke loose a minute ago. A general attack from every side. Worse than I've ever seen." What do you mean?" Kirk stammered in disbelief. "The war is over. We blasted them. We destroyed their headquarters completely." "The war is going on like it never has before," the other snapped back. "I don't know what you did, but it stirred up the stew pot of hell here. Now stop talking and get the ship back." Kirk turned slowly to face Jason, his face pulled back in a look of raw animal savagery. You did it! I should have killed you the first time I saw you. I wanted to. Now I know I was right. You've been like a plague since you came here, sowing death in every direction. I knew you were wrong, yet I let your twisted words convince me. And look what has happened. First you killed Welf, then you murdered those men in the cave. Now this attack on the perimeter, all who die there, you will have killed. Kirk advanced on Jason, step by slow step, hatred twisting his features. Jason backed away until he could retreat no further, his shoulders against the chart case. Kirk's hand lashed out, not a fighting blow, but an open slap. Though Jason rolled with it, it still battered him and stretched him full length on the floor. His arm was against the chart case, his fingers near the sealed tubes that held the jump matrices. Jason seized one of the heavy tubes with both hands and pulled it out. He swung it with all his strength into Kirk's face. It broke the skin on his cheekbone and forehead, and blood ran from the cuts. But it didn't slow or stop the big man in the slightest. His smile held no mercy as he reached down and dragged Jason to his feet. "Go on, fight back," he said. "I will have that much more pleasure as I kill you." He drew back the granite fist that would tear Jason's head from his shoulders. "Go ahead," Jason said and stopped struggling. "Kill me. You can do it easily, only don't call it justice. Welf died to save me, but the men on the island died because of your stupidity. I wanted peace and you wanted war. Now you have it. Kill me to soothe your conscience, because the truth is something you can't face up to." With a bellow of rage, Kirk drove the pile driver fist down. Meta grabbed the arm in both her hands and hung on, pulling it aside before the blow could land. The three of them fell together, half crushing Jason. "Don't do it!" she screamed. "Jason didn't want those men to go down there. That was your idea. You can't kill him for that." Kirk, exploding with rage, was past hearing. He turned his attention to Meta, tearing her from him. She was a woman, and her supple strength was meager compared to his great muscles. but she was a Pyrrhan woman, and she did what no off-worlder could. She slowed him for a moment, stopped the fury of his attack until he could rip her hands loose and throw her aside. It didn't take him long to do this, but it was just enough time for Jason to get to the door. Jason stumbled through and jammed shut the lock behind him. A split second after he had driven the bolt home, Kirk's weight plunged into the door. The metal screamed and bent, giving way. One hinge was torn loose, and the other held only by a shred of metal. It would go down on the next blow. Jason wasn't waiting for that. He hadn't stayed to see if the door would stop the raging Pyrrhan. No door on the ship could stop him. Fast as possible, Jason went down the gangway. There was no safety on the ship, which meant he had to get off of it. The lifeboat deck was just ahead. Ever since seeing them, he had given a lot of thought to the lifeboats. Though he hadn't looked ahead to this situation, he knew a time might come when he would need transportation of his own. The lifeboats had seemed to be the best bet, except that Meta had told him they had no fuel. She had been right in one thing. The boat he had been in had empty tanks. He had checked. There were 5 other boats, though, that he hadn't examined. He had wondered about the idea of useless lifeboats and come to what he had hoped was a correct conclusion. This spaceship was the only one the Pyrrhans had. Meta had told him once that they always had planned to buy another ship, but never did. Some other necessary war expense always managed to come up first. One ship was really enough for their uses. The only difficulty lay in the fact that they had to keep that ship in operation, or the Pyrrhan city was dead. Without supplies, they would be wiped out in a few months. Therefore, the ship's crew couldn't conceive of abandoning their ship. No matter what kind of trouble she got into, they couldn't leave her. When the ship died, so did their world. With this kind of thinking, there was no need to keep the lifeboats fueled. Not all of them, at least. Though it stood to reason at least one of them held fuel for short flights that would have been wasteful for the parent ship. At this point, Jason's chain of logic grew weak. Too many ifs. If they used the lifeboats at all, one of them should be fueled. If they did, it would be fueled now. And if it were fueled, which one of the 6 would it be? Jason had no time to go looking. He had to be right the first time. His reasoning had supplied him with an answer. The last of a long line of suppositions. If a boat were fueled, it should be the one nearest to the control cabin, the one he was diving towards right now. His life depended on this string of guesses. Behind him, the door went down with a crash. Kirk bellowed and leaped. Jason hurled himself through the lifeboat port with the nearest thing to a run he could manage under the doubled gravity. With both hands, he grabbed the emergency launching handle and pulled down. An alarm bell rang, and the port slammed shut, literally in Kirk's face. Only his Pyrrhan reflexes saved him from being smashed by it. Solid fuel launchers exploded and blasted the lifeboat clear of the parent ship. Their brief acceleration slammed Jason to the deck. Then he floated as the boat went into freefall. The main drive rockets didn't fire. In that moment, Jason learned what it was like to know he was dead. Without fuel, the boat would drop into the jungle below, falling like a rock and blasting apart when it hit. There was no way out. Then the rockets caught, roared, and he dropped to the deck, bruising his nose. He sat up, rubbing it and grinning. There was fuel in the tanks. The delay in starting had only been part of the launching cycle, giving the lifeboat time to fail. I'm sorry, I am really struggling today. Let's try that again. There was fuel in the tanks. The delay in starting had only been part of the launching cycle, giving the lifeboat time to fall clear of the ship. Now to get it under control. He pulled himself into the pilot's seat. The altimeter had fed information to the autopilot, leveling the boat off parallel to the ground. Like all lifeboat controls, these were childishly simple, designed to be used by novices in an emergency. The autopilot could not be shut off. It rode along with the manual controls, tempering foolish piloting. Jason hauled the control wheel into a tight turn, and the autopilot gentled it to a soft curve. Through the port, he could see the big ship blaring fire in a much tighter turn. Jason didn't know who was flying it or what they had in mind. He took no chances. Jamming the wheel forward into a dive, he cursed as they eased into a gentle drop. The larger ship had no such restrictions. It changed course with a violent maneuver and dived on him. The forward turret fired, and an explosion at the stern rocked the little boat. This either knocked out the autopilot or shocked it into submission. The slow drop turned into a power dive, and the jungle billowed up. Jason pulled the wheel back, and there was just time enough to get his arms out in front of his face before they hit. Thundering rockets and cracking trees ended in a great splash. Silence followed, and smoke drifted away. High above, the spaceship circled hesitantly, dropping a bit as if wanting to go down and investigate, then rising again as the urgent message for aid came from the city. Loyalty won, and she turned and spewed fire towards home. Alright, I think we've got time to read chapter 23 as well. Let's take a short break so I can get some water. Then we'll get back to it. Alright, chapter 23. Tree branches had broken the lifeboat's fall. The bow rockets had burned out in an emergency blast, and the swamp had cushioned the landing a bit. But it was still a crash. The battered cylinder sank slowly into the stagnant water and thin mud of the swamp. The bow was well under before Jason managed to kick open the emergency hatch in the waist. There was no way of knowing how long it would take for the boat to go under, and Jason was in no condition to ponder the situation. Concussed and bloody, he had just enough drive left to get himself out. Wading and falling, he made his way to firmer land, sitting down heavily as soon as he found something that would support him. Behind him, the lifeboat burbled and sank under the water. Bubbles of trapped air kept rising for a while, then stopped. The water stilled and, except for the broken branches and trees, there was no sign that a ship had ever come this way at all. Insects whined across the swamp, and the only sound that broke the quiet of the woods beyond was the cruel scream of an animal pulling down its dinner. When that had echoed away in tiny waves of sound, everything was silent. Jason pulled himself out of the half-trance with an effort. His body felt like it had been through a meat grinder, and it was almost impossible to think with the fog in his head. After minutes of deliberation, he figured out that the medkit was what he needed. The easy-off snap was very difficult, and the button release didn't work. He finally twisted his arm around until it was under the orifice and pressed the entire unit down. It buzzed industriously, though he couldn't feel the needles. He guessed it had worked. His sight spun dizzily for a while, and then cleared. Painkillers went to work, and he slowly came out of the dark cloud that had enveloped his brain since the crash. Reason returned, and loneliness rode along with it. He was without food, friendless, surrounded by the hostile forces of an alien planet. There was a rising panic that started deep inside of him that took concentrated effort to hold down. "Think, Jason. Don't emote." He said it aloud to reassure himself, but was instantly sorry because his voice sounded weak in the emptiness, with a ragged edge of hysteria to it. Something caught in his throat, and he coughed to clear it, spitting out blood. Looking at the red stain, he was suddenly angry. Hating this deadly planet and the incredible stupidity of the people who lived on it, cursing out loud was better, and his voice didn't sound as weak now. He ended up shouting and shaking his fist at nothing in particular, but it helped. The anger washed away the fear and brought him back to reality. Sitting on the ground felt good now. The sun was warm, and when he leaned back, he could almost forget the unending burden of double gravity. Anger had carried away fear. Rest erased fatigue. From somewhere in the back of his mind, there popped up the old platitude, "Where there's life, there's hope." He grimaced at the triteness of the words, at the same time realizing that a basic truth lurked there. Count his assets. Well battered, but still alive. None of the bruises seemed very important, and no bones were broken. His gun was still working. It dipped in and out of the power holster as he thought about it. Pyrrus made rugged equipment. The medkit was operating as well. If he kept his senses, managed to walk in a fairly straight line, and could live off of the land, there was a fair chance he might make it back to the city. What kind of a reception would be waiting for him there was a different matter altogether. He would find that out after he arrived. Getting there had first priority. On the debit side, there stood the planet Pyrrus. Strength-sapping gravity, murderous weather, and violent animals. Could he survive? As if to add emphasis to his thoughts, the sky darkened over and rain hissed into the forest, marching towards him. Jason scrambled to his feet and took a bearing before the rain closed down visibility. A jagged chain of mountains stood dimly on the horizon. He remembered crossing them on the flight out. They would do as a first goal. After he had reached them, he would worry about the next leg of the journey. Short page break here. I take a drink. Leaves and dirt flew before the wind in quick gusts, then the rain washed over him. Soaked, chilled, already bone-tired, he pitted the tottering strength of his legs against the planet of death. When nightfall came, it was still raining. There was no way of being sure of the direction, and no point in going on. If that wasn't enough, Jason was on the ragged edge of exhaustion. It was going to be a wet night. All the trees were thick-boled and slippery. He couldn't have climbed them on a 1G world. The sheltered spots that he investigated, under fallen trees and beneath thick bushes, were just as wet as the rest of the forest. In the end, he curled up on the leeward side of a tree and fell asleep, shivering, with the water dripping off of him. The rain stopped around midnight, and the temperature fell sharply. Jason woke sluggishly from a dream in which he was being frozen to death, to find it was almost true. Fine snow was sifting through the trees, powdering the ground and drifting against him. The cold bit into his flesh, and when he sneezed, it hurt his chest. His aching and numb body only wanted rest, but the spark of reason that remained in him forced him to his feet. If he lay down now, he would die. Holding one hand against the tree so he wouldn't fall, he began to trudge around it. Step after shuffling step, around and around, until the terrible cold eased a bit and he could stop shivering. Fatigue crawled up him like a muffling gray blanket. He kept on walking, half the time with his eyes closed, opening them only when he fell and had to climb painfully to his feet again. The sun burned away the snow clouds at dawn. Jason leaned against his tree and blinked up at the sky with sore eyes. The ground was white in all directions, except around the tree where his stumbling feet had churned a circle of black mud. His back against the smooth trunk, Jason sank slowly down to the ground, letting the sun soak into him. Exhaustion had him lightheaded, and his lips were cracked from thirst. Almost continuous coughing tore at his chest with fingers of fire. Though the sun was still low, it was hot already, burning his skin dry and hot. It wasn't right. This thought kept nagging at his brain until he admitted it, turned it over, and looked at it from all sides. What wasn't right? The way he felt. Pneumonia. He had all the symptoms. His dry lips cracked, and blood moistened them when he smiled. He had avoided all the animal perils of Pyrrus, all the big carnivores and poisonous reptiles, only to be laid low by the smallest beast of them all. Well, he had the remedy for this one, too. Rolling up his sleeve with shaking fingers, he pressed the mouth of the medkit to his bare arm. It clicked and began to drone an angry whine. That meant something, he knew, but he just couldn't remember what. Holding it up, he saw that one of the hypodermics was projecting halfway from its socket. Of course, it was empty of whatever antibiotic the analyzer had called for. It needed refilling. Jason hurled the thing away with a curse, and it splashed into a pool and was gone. End of medicine, end of medkit, end of Jason dinAlt. Single-handed battler against the perils of Deathworld, strong-hearted stranger who could do as well as the natives. It had taken him all of one day on his own to get his death warrant signed. A choking growl echoed behind him. He turned, dropped, and fired in the same motion. It was all over before his conscious mind was aware it had happened. Pyrrhus training had conditioned his reflexes on the pre-cortical level. Jason gaped at the ugly beast dying not a meter from him and realized he had been trained well. His first reaction was unhappiness that he had killed one of the grubber dogs. When he looked closer, he realized this animal was slightly different in markings, size, and temper. Though most of its forequarters were blown away, blood pumping out in dying spurts, it kept trying to reach Jason. Before the eyes glazed with death, it had struggled its way almost to his feet. It wasn't quite a grubber dog, though chances were it was a wild relative. Bearing the same relation as dog to wolf, perhaps. He wondered if there were any other resemblances between wolves and this dead beast. Did they hunt in packs, too? As soon as the thought hit him, he looked up, not a moment too soon. The great forms were drifting through the trees, closing in on him. When he shot two, the others snarled with rage and sank back into the forest. But they didn't leave. Instead of being frightened by the deaths, they grew even more enraged. Jason sat with his back to the tree and waited until they came close before he picked them off. With each shot and dying scream, the outraged survivors howled the louder. Some of them fought when they met, venting their rage. One stood on his hind legs and raked great strips of bark from a tree. Jason aimed a shot at it, but he was too far away to hit. There were advantages to having a fever, he realized. Logically, he knew he would live only to sunset, or until his gun was empty, yet the fact didn't bother him greatly. Nothing really mattered. He slumped, relaxed completely, only raising his arm to fire, then letting it drop again. Every few minutes he had to move to look in back of the tree and kill any of them that were stalking him in his blind spot. He wished dimly that he were leaning against a smaller tree, but it wasn't worth the effort to go to one. Sometime in the afternoon, he fired his last shot. It killed an animal he had allowed to get close. He had noticed he was missing the longer shots. The beast snarled and dropped. The others that were close pulled back and howled in sympathy. One of them exposed himself, and Jason pulled the trigger. There was only a slight click. He tried again, in case it was just a misfire, but there was still only the click. The gun was empty, as was the spare clip pouch at his belt. There were vague memories of reloading, though he couldn't remember how many times he had done it. This, then, was the end. They had all been right. Pyrrhus was a match for him. Though they shouldn't talk, it would kill them all in the end, too. Pyrrhus never died in bed. Old Pyrrhus never died. They just got ate. Now that he didn't have to force himself to stay alert and hold the gun, the fever took hold. He wanted to sleep, and he knew it would be a long sleep. His eyes were almost closed as he watched the wary carnivores slip closer to him. The first one crept close enough to spring. He could see the muscles tensing in its leg. It leaped. Whirling in midair, it fell before it reached him. Blood ran from its gaping mouth, and the short shaft of metal projected from the side of his head. The two men walked out of the brush and looked down at him. Their mere presence seemed to have been enough for the carnivores, because they all vanished. Grubbers. He had been in such a hurry to reach the city that he had forgotten about the grubbers. It was good that they were here, and Jason was very glad they had come. He couldn't talk very well, so he smiled to thank them, but this hurt his lips too much, so he went to sleep. Okay, one more chapter, maybe. It's the end of 23, so yeah, you know what? Let's read 24. I just need another short break. Okay, chapter 24. For a strange length of time after that, there were only hazy patches of memory that impressed themselves on Jason. A sense of movement and large beasts around him, walls, wood smoke, the murmur of voices. None of it meant very much, and he was too tired to care. It was easier and much better just to let go. "About time," Rez said. "A couple more days lying there like that, and we would have buried you, even if you were still breathing." Jason blinked at him, trying to focus the face that swam above him. He finally recognized Rez and wanted to answer him, but talking only brought on a spell of body-racking coughing. Someone held a cup to his lips, and sweet fluid trickled down his throat. He rested, then tried again. "How long have I been here?" The voice was thin and sounded far away. Jason had trouble recognizing it for his own. 8 days. And why didn't you listen when I talked to you?" Rez said. "You should have stayed near the ship when you crashed. Didn't you remember what I said about coming down anywhere on this continent? No matter, too late to worry about that. Next time, listen to what I say. Our people moved fast and reached the site of the wreck before dark. They found the broken trees and the spot where the ship had sunk, and at first thought whoever had been in it had drowned. Then one of the dogs found your trail, but lost it again in the swamps during the night. They had a fine time with the mud and the snow, and didn't have any luck at all in finding the spoor again. By the next afternoon, they were ready to send for more help when they heard your firing. Just made it, from what I hear. Lucky one of them was a talker and could tell the wild dogs to clear out. Would have had to kill them all otherwise, and that's not healthy." "Thanks for saving my neck," Jason said. "That was closer than I like to come. What happened after? I was sure I was done for. I remember that much. Diagnosed all the symptoms of pneumonia. Guaranteed fatal in my condition without treatment. Looks like you were wrong when you said most of your remedies were useless. They seemed to work well on me." His voice died off as Rez shook his head in a slow no, lines of worry sharp cut into his face. Jason looked around and saw Noxa and another man. They had the same deeply unhappy expressions as Rez. "What is it?" Jason asked, feeling the trouble. "If your remedies didn't work, what did? Not my medkit, that was empty. I remember losing it or throwing it away." "You were dying?" Rez said slowly. "We couldn't cure you. Only a Junkman medicine machine could do that. We got one from the driver of the food truck." "But how?" Jason asked, dazed. "You told me the city forbids you medicine. He couldn't give you his own medkit. Not unless he was..." Rez nodded and finished the sentence. "Dead. Of course he was dead. I killed him myself, and with a great deal of pleasure." This hit Jason hard. He sagged against the pillows and thought of all those who had died since he had come to Pyrrus. The men who had died to save him, died so he could live, died because of his ideas. It was a burden of guilt that he couldn't bear to think about. Would it stop with Cranon, or would the city people try to avenge his death? "Don't you realize what that means?" He gasped out the words. "Cranon's death will turn the city against you. There will be no more supplies. They'll attack you when they can, kill your people." "Of course we know that." Rez leaned forward, his voice hoarse and intense. "It wasn't an easy decision to come to. We've always had a trading agreement with the Junkmen. The trading trucks were inviolate. This was our last and only link to the galaxy outside, and our eventual hope of contacting them. Yet you broke that link to save me? Why?" "Only you can answer that question completely. There was a great attack on the city, and we saw their walls broken. They had to be moved back at one place. At the same time, the spaceship was over the ocean, dropping bombs of some kind. The flash was reported. Then the ship returned, and you left it in a smaller ship. They fired at you, but didn't kill you. The little ship wasn't destroyed either. We are starting to raise it now. What does it all mean? We had no way of telling. We only knew it was something vitally important. You were alive, but would obviously die before you could talk. The small ship might be repaired to fly. Perhaps that was your plan, and that is why you stole it for us. We couldn't let you die, not even if it meant all-out war with the city. The situation was explained to all of our people who could be reached by screen, and they voted to save you. I killed the junk man for his medicine, then rode 2 Dorans to death to get here in time. Now tell us, what does it mean? What is your plan? How will it help us? Guilt leaned on Jason and stifled his mouth. A fragment of an ancient legend cut across his mind about the Jonah who wrecked the spacer so all in it died, yet he lived. Was that he? Had he wrecked a world? Could he dare admit to these people that he had taken the lifeboat only to save his own life? The 3 Pyrrans leaned forward, waiting for his words. Jason closed his eyes so he wouldn't see their faces. What could he tell them? If he admitted the truth, they would undoubtedly kill him on the spot, considering it only justice. He wasn't fearful for his own life anymore, but if he died, the other deaths would all have been in vain. And there still was a way to end this planetary war. All the facts were available now. It was just a matter of putting them together. If only he wasn't so tired, he could see the solution. It was right there, lurking around a corner in his brain, waiting to be dragged out. Whatever he did, he couldn't admit the truth now. If he died, all hope died. He had to lie to gain time, then find the true solution as soon as he was able. That was all he could do. You were right, Jason said, haltingly. The small ship has an interstellar drive in it. Perhaps it can still be saved. Even if it can't, there is another way. I can't explain now, but I will tell you when I am rested. Don't worry, the fight is almost over. They laughed and pounded each other on the back. When they came to shake his hand as well, he closed his eyes and made believe he was asleep. It's very hard to be a hypocrite if you aren't trained for it. Rez woke him early the next morning. Do you feel well enough to travel? He asked. Depends what you mean by travel, Jason told him. If you mean under my own power, I doubt if I could get as far as that door. You'll be carried, Rez broke in. We have a litter swung between 2 dorms. Not too comfortable, but you'll get there. But only if you think you are well enough to move. We called all the people within riding distance, and they are beginning to gather. By this afternoon, we'll have enough men and dorms to pull the ship out of the swamp. I'll come, Jason said, pushing himself to a sitting position. The effort exhausted him, bringing a wave of nausea. Only by leaning his full weight against the wall could he keep from falling back. He sat, propped there, until he heard shouts and the stamping of heavy feet outside, and they came to carry him out. The trip drained away his small store of energy, and he fell into an exhausted sleep. When he opened his eyes, the dorms were standing knee-deep in the swamp, and the salvage operation had begun. Ropes vanished out of sight in the water, while lines of struggling animals and men hauled at them. The beasts bellowed, the men cursed as they slipped and fell. All of the Pyrrans tugging on the lines weren't male, women were there as well. Shorter on average than the men, they were just as brawny. Their clothing was varied and many-colored, the first touch of decoration Jason had seen on this planet. Getting the ship up was a heartbreaking job. The mud sucked at it, and underwater roots caught on the veins. Divers plunged time and again into the brown water to cut them free. Progress was incredibly slow, but the work never stopped. Jason's brain was working even slower. The ship would be hauled up, eventually. What would he do then? He had to have a new plan by that time, but thinking was impossible work. His thoughts corkscrewed, and he had to fight down the rising feeling of panic. The sun was low when the ship's nose finally appeared above the water. A ragged cheer broke out at first sight of that battered cone of metal, and they went ahead with new energy. Jason was the first one who noticed the dorm weaving towards them. The dogs saw it, of course, and ran out and sniffed. The rider shouted to the dogs and kicked angrily at the sides of his mount. Even at this distance, Jason could see the beast's heaving sides and yellow, foam-flecked hide. It was barely able to stagger now, and the man jumped down, running ahead on foot. He was shouting something as he ran that couldn't be heard above the noise. There was a single moment when the sound slacked a bit, and the man's running voice could be heard. The running man's voice could be heard. He was calling the same word over and over again. It sounded like, "Wait!" but Jason couldn't be sure. Others had heard him, though, and the result was instantaneous. They stopped, unmoving where they were. Many of those holding the ropes let go of them. Only the quick action of the anchormen kept the ship from sliding back under, dragging the harnessed dorums with it. A wave of silence washed across the swamp in the wake of the running man's shouts. They could be heard clearly now. "Quake! Quake on the way! South! Only safe way is south!" One by one, the ropes dropped back into the water, and the Pyrrans turned to wade to solid land. Before they were well started, Ress's voice cracked out. "Stay at work! Get the ship up! It's our only hope now! I'll talk to Hananos, find out how much time we have." These solitary people were unused to orders. They stopped and milled about, reason fighting with the urgent desire to run. One by one, they stepped back to the ropes as they worked out the sense of Ress's words. As soon as it was clear the work would continue, he turned away. "What is it? What's happening?" Jason called to him as he ran by. "It's Hananas," Ress said, stopping by the litter, waiting for the newcomer to reach him. "He's a quakeman. They know when quakes are coming, before they happen." Hananas ran up, panting and tired. He was a short man, built like a barrel on stubby legs, a great white beard covering his neck and the top of his chest. Another time, Jason might have laughed at his incongruous waddle, but not now. There was a charged difference in the air since the little man had arrived. Why didn't you have somebody near a plate? I called all over this area without an answer. Finally, had to come myself." "How much time do we have?" Ress cut in. "We have to get that ship up before we pull out." "Time? Who knows about time?" the graybeard cursed. "Get out or you're dead!" "Calm down, Han," Ress said in a quieter voice, taking the oldster's arms in both of his hands. "You know what we're doing here, and how much depends on getting the ship up. Now how does it feel? Is this going to be a fast one or a slow one?" "Fast! Faster than anything I felt in a long time. She's starting far away, though. If you had a plate here, I bet Mach or someone else up near the Firelands would be reporting new eruptions. It's on the way, and if we don't get out soon, we're not getting out at all." There was a burble of water as the ship was hauled out a bit farther. No one talked now, and there was a fierce urgency in their movements. Jason still wasn't sure exactly what had happened. "Don't shoot me for a foreigner," he said, "but just what is wrong? Are you expecting earthquakes here? Are you sure?" "Sure?" Hananas screeched. "Of course I'm sure. If I wasn't sure, I wouldn't be a quakeman. It's on the way." "There's no doubt of that," Ress added. "I don't know how you can tell on your planet when quakes or volcanism are going to start. Machines, maybe. We have nothing like that. But quakemen, like Hananas here, always know about them before they happen. If the word can be passed fast enough, we get away. The quake is coming all right. The only thing in doubt is how much time we have." The work went on, and there was a good chance they would die long before it was finished. All for nothing. The only way Jason could get them to stop would be to admit that the ship was useless. He would be killed then, and the grubber chances would die with him. He chewed his lip as the sun set, and the work continued by torchlight. Hananas paced around, grumbling under his breath, halting only to glance at the northern horizon. The people felt his restlessness and transmitted it to the animals. Dogfights broke out, and the dorums pulled reluctantly at their harnesses. With each passing second, their chances grew slimmer, and Jason searched desperately for a way out of the trap of his own constructing. "Look!" someone said, and they all turned. The sky to the north was lit with a red light. There was a rumble in the ground that was felt more than heard. The surface of the water blurred, then broke into tiny patterns of waves. Jason turned away from the light, looking at the water and the ship. It was higher now, the top of the stern exposed. There was a gaping hole here, blasted through the metal by the spaceship's guns. "Rez," he called, his words jammed together in the rush to get them out. "Look at the ship, at the hole blasted in her stern. I landed on the rockets and didn't know how badly she was hit, but the guns hit the star drive. Res gaped at him unbelievingly as he went on, improvising, playing by ear, trying to manufacture lies that rang of the truth. I watched them install the drive. It's an auxiliary to the other engines. It was bolted to the hull right there. It's gone now, blown up. This boat will never leave the planet, much less go to another star. He couldn't look Res in the eyes after that. He sank back into the furs that had been propped behind him, feeling the weakness even more. Res was silent, and Jason couldn't tell if his story had been believed. Only when the Pyrrus bent and slashed the nearest rope did he know he had won. The word passed from man to man, and the ropes were cut silently. Behind them, the ship they had labored so hard over sank back into the water. None of them watched. Each was locked in his own world of thoughts as they formed up to leave. As soon as the dorms were saddled and packed, they started out, Hananas leading the way. Within minutes, they were all moving, a single file that vanished into the darkness. Jason's litter had to be left behind. It would have been smashed to pieces in the night march. Res pulled him up into the saddle before him, locking his body into place with a steel-hard arm. The trek continued. When they left the swamp, they changed direction sharply. A little later, Jason knew why, when the southern sky exploded. Flames lit the scene brightly, ashes sifted down, and hot lumps of rock crashed into the trees. They steamed when they hit, and if it hadn't been for the earlier rain, they would have been faced with a forest fire as well. Something large loomed up next to the line of march, and when they crossed an open space, Jason looked at it in the reflected light from the sky. "Res!" he choked, pointing. Res looked at the great beast moving next to them, shaggy body and twisted horns as high as their shoulders, then looked away. He wasn't frightened or apparently interested. Jason looked around then and began to understand. All of the fleeing animals made no sound. That's why he hadn't noticed them before. But on both sides, dark forms ran between the trees. Some he recognized, most of them he didn't. For a few minutes, a pack of wild dogs ran near them, even mingling with the domesticated dogs. No notice was taken. Flying things flapped overhead. Under the greater threat of the volcanoes, all other battles were forgotten. Life respected life. A herd of fat, pig-like beasts with curling tusks blundered through the line. The dorms slowed, picking their steps carefully so they wouldn't step on them. Smaller animals sometimes clung to the backs of the bigger ones, riding untouched a while before they leaped off. Pounded mercilessly by the saddle, Jason fell wearily into a light sleep. It was shot through with dreams of the rushing animals, hurrying on forever in silence. With his eyes open or shut, he saw the same endless stream of beasts. It all meant something, and he frowned as he tried to think what. Animals running. Pyrrus animals. He sat bolt upright suddenly, wide awake, staring down in comprehension. "What is it?" Res asked. "Go on," Jason said. "Get us out of this, and get us out safely. I told you the lifeboat wasn't the only answer. I know how your people can get what they want. End the war now. There is a way, and I know how it can be done." All right, we'll stop there for now, and we'll start 25 next time. This is taking an interesting turn. I feel bad for Jason. People just dropping like flies around him every time he does something. It sucks. It's an understatement. Anyway, I've been enjoying this one. This is different. It's unique. I'm looking forward to seeing how they close it out. Spoiler alert, we have, let's see, I think 4 chapters left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. 4 chapters left. So look forward to a near ending. I am very curious how this wraps up. All right, folks, thanks for hanging out. I will catch you next time. As always, thank you to Aindulmedir. Go show him some love. And yeah, we'll catch you folks next time. Take it easy.